All right, hello. Thank you all for joining us at the 11th Annual Denver Startup Week. Can everybody in the back hear me okay? Can I get like a thumbs? Okay, great. I want to first say thank you to all of our title sponsors, Capital One Cafe, Amazon, Dell for Startups, and the Downtown Denver Partnership. This session, Scrap the Status Quo, Creating Personal Branding with Ease, is part of the designer track sponsored by the Public Works and Battery 621, one of 8 programming tracks aimed at supporting the entire entrepreneurial team. By attending this session, you're agreeing to follow our code of conduct, as well as to being photographed and recorded on video. Be sure to share your experience at this session using hashtag DEN Startup Week. We really couldn't do it without our sponsors, so we really appreciate their help and support. So a little bit about me. I am Christy of Christy Black Creative, and I help entrepreneurs with bright eyes and big whys cultivate more joy and ease in their businesses through strategic brand design. Another way of saying this is that I work with mission-driven businesses of all sizes to create branding and packaging that solves their businesses' problems. In my 12 years of doing this work, I've had the great pleasure of working with large international companies, smaller startups, entrepreneurs, and influencers, and have had products and packaging I've designed sold at major retailers like Nordstrom, J.Crew, Anthropologie, and more. But before we get started, I want to tell you a story that's going to really iterate why we are here today. Because before I was this person wearing a wild jumpsuit in front of you at 10 a.m., I was just a middle schooler who wanted to fit in with the cool kids. Now bear with me, I promise this is going to tie in. So I traded all of my clothes that were a little bit wild, maybe not quite this wild, for this American Eagle t-shirt. I was like, this is what the cool kids want. I'm gonna fit in. And so I showed up to school thinking, all right, this is my time to shine. I'm not gonna be too loud. I'm gonna be quiet and hold back. And as soon as I walk in thinking, this is my day, a kid named Eric looked at me and was like, why did you change your appearance? Those are the things that made you cool to begin with. And that is exactly what branding can feel like. So many of us try to bend and contort and fit into places and spaces in order to blend in. And this happens even more for marginalized groups of people. And it makes sense that we would want to fit in because as humans, we're hardwired for connection to want to be in these groups and communities. But when it comes to business and entrepreneurship, blending in isn't going to help you stand out. It's not going to keep you safe, and it's certainly not going to bring you success. All it's going to do is uphold the status quo at the cost of your magic and quite possibly your bottom line. And you are capable of so much more, and so this is where our work begins today. This is Scrap the Status Quo, Create Personal Branding with Ease. So we're going to talk about 4 different areas today. We're going to talk about how to identify your brand vision. We're going to talk about why values are the heart of every successful brand and how you can leverage them. We're going to talk about your brand's voice, which is really your brand's personality and how that will impact what your brand is doing. And then we're going to use these 3 points to then talk about how you can then translate that into meaningful branding from a visual perspective. So entrepreneurs and personal brands rarely get into business because they love the status quo. They love the way things have always been done. Most of us are just trying to uncover our own vision, our own values, our own voice. And once we start to leverage that, you can put your bat signal out into the sky so that your clients and customers can find you. And so this brings us to the question, what is branding? Now, I'll keep the vocab lesson short. I know you didn't come here for a vocabulary lesson, but I think it's important that we're all using the same vernacular to talk about branding. And so while the title of this talk mentions personal branding, which usually refers to influencers, thought leaders, authors, people that are using their own name to promote their business, this is going to apply if you have a service-based business, if you have a product-based business of any scale, all of these principles are going to apply to you. So just for my reference, for a quick poll, how many personal brands do we have in the room? All right, personal brands, nice, good chunk. How many of us are coaches or service-based businesses? Service-based, very good. And then product-based businesses. Nice, we got a nice healthy mix. I think a couple people didn't raise their hands, but we don't all fit neatly into boxes, and I respect that about you. So branding, when we talk about it, we often think about it from the perspective of the target audience. This makes sense. This is the way that we generate more income, more revenue. And so branding is more than just the colors and the fonts. I think we all sort of know that now. And this is really the way you serve your customers. It's the way that they experience your brand at every single touch point. From first going to your website to onboarding, every single touch point has an impact on their experience. And really, as entrepreneurs, we try our best to shape the branding experience, but we can't fully control our reputation. But this is how we try to manage it. And so also, when you think about meeting people, there are probably some people you've met this week, and in a couple of months, you might go, oh, I can't quite remember their name or what they did, but you're going to remember how they made you feel. And that's exactly how branding works too. It's that sort of lingering connection that you have to the brand. And then visually speaking, because yes, the visuals are part of it, we're also going to be trying to convey a sense of trustworthiness, a sense of confidence, and then really trying to exude the values and vision and voice that we're going to establish throughout this workshop. And I also want to note that branding has huge benefits for the founder, the CEO of the business as well. Because I think a lot of times we're like, oh, branding, I'll put that off. I'll do that next year. I'll do it whenever. And I want you to know that branding is just a series of tools and resources that makes your life easier. Because now it's going to allow you to attract more of those ideal clients, so that way you are able to communicate with them more effectively. It's going to streamline the creation of marketing assets, be that campaigns, visuals, the messaging. And it's also going to get you back valuable time, so you can get back to doing what you set out to do in the first place, which is build your business. And wildly aligned branding isn't invented. It's something that is uncovered. This is why you can't just lift inspiration from someone else's brand and go, oh, I like their colors, I like the fonts they're using, I'm going to apply that to me. Because those things work for them because they're related to their vision, their values, their voice. So once you start to realize that you can't just lift it, you have to uncover that within you, that's where the true work starts. And so the analogy that I often use with entrepreneurs is that you have all of the puzzle pieces that you need to create a head-turning brand already within you. And it's my job as a brand designer and strategist to take those pieces and show you the larger image that it creates, so that way your ideal clients can come and view it and appreciate it. So when we think about branding, you've already heard me use this alliteration a couple times now. We're going to talk about 4 areas in branding. We're going to talk about vision, values, voice, and visuals. So vision is really the long-term aspiration and thinking really big. What's the impact I want to have on the world? Then we're going to talk about your values. This is what you stand for in your business. And then we're going to talk about your voice. This is your brand's personality. And it also gets into tone and the voice of your messaging as well. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the visuals. Now, these 3 solid circles, those are the easiest ones for you to take action on today. Visuals are a little bit harder. It takes a little bit more nuance and technical experience to bring those 3 points into a visual standpoint. But I'm going to walk you through some really concrete steps you can take for those first 3 to improve your branding right away. So let's talk about vision. Vision is the long-term aspiration for your business or brand. It's also the larger impact that you want to have on the world. And I want to note that you might not even know how you're going to get there, but it's that sort of why. I think most of us as entrepreneurs and in the startup space, we're familiar with Simon Sinek's Start With Why. If we haven't read the book, maybe we've seen the TED Talk. If you haven't, check it out. But the why behind what we are doing is so important, and that's really what the vision is getting at. And it's usually driven by deeply rooted passions and values. And so we're going to talk more about values next, but know as you start to think about your vision, some of your values are going to become more clear. What vision isn't? Sometimes I think it's helpful to talk about the antithesis of a topic. So vision is not just a vague description of your offerings. It's not your mission statement. Oftentimes, your mission statement is in support of the vision. So mission statement usually refers to the specific offerings you have that are bringing you to the vision that you want to see happen. It's not a generic sentiment slapped on office walls or on mugs without any thought. This happens with values too. It really has to be something that is integrated into your everyday life. So I'm going to walk you through these 3 questions, and feel free to take a picture because these are going to be the ones that help you get clear on what your vision is for your business. So the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what aspects of my industry, my business at large, what am I frustrated by, or what do I rebel against? And I ask this question because frustration and aspiration are 2 sides of the same coin. Oftentimes when we are expressing frustration about something, it means I'm frustrated because this desire is not met. This vision I have for the world is not there yet. So start by identifying what you get frustrated by, what kind of mold you want to break. This is scrap the status quo, right? We're trying to buck the norms at least a little bit. So the example that I have here for this first question, this is going to be just a generic example, is as active and outdoorsy people, we are frustrated by the lack of options for quality, eco-conscious outdoor apparel and gear. Okay? The next question you want to ask yourself after you kind of have identified what you are frustrated by is, what is the deeper desire underneath that frustration? So in this example, we love planet Earth and spending time in nature. We have so much respect for this planet, and we as business owners need to take action before it's too late. So now, once you know, okay, this is my frustration, this is my aspiration, now we need to understand, what would the world look like at large if this came to fruition? And so that larger example here is, we would be collectively working to mitigate climate change, and we would be doing good by the Earth. And so now that you have these three pieces, you know what you're frustrated by, you know the desire beneath it, you know the vision that you have for the world at large, you can come up with a vision statement. So for this example, the vision statement might be something like, build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire, and implement solutions to help the environmental crisis. And if any of this sounds familiar, this is an example from Patagonia. And if you've been keeping up with Patagonia, you know that the founder recently gave away the $3 billion company to environmental causes, stating that the Earth is now our only shareholder. And yes, I'm sure there are plenty of people who could talk about the tax benefits of it and the pitfalls of it and all of that, but if nothing else, it is so on brand for Patagonia. And so for the people who already loved Patagonia, they went out and they're like, I need to support this brand more. And for the people who are like, oh, I'm on the fence, it drew attention to them. So this is what having a really clear vision can do for your brand. Again, you could take a picture of this. These are those questions again, and I've added a fourth one for you to consider, which is, what do you, as the business owner, the founder, the CEO, what do you want your life and business to look like? And I think this is something we can so easily bypass, but we did not start our own businesses because we want to recreate the day jobs we already had. And how many of us have found ourselves doing exactly that because we weren't intentional with our schedules? And then we start overworking. Sound familiar to anyone else? Yes. So being really intentional with your vision for your own life too is just as important. And because one of my values and things that I believe is that we deserve more joy and ease as entrepreneurs, this is critical. And so there's often this misconception that, if you do the thing you love, you'll never, work a day in your life. Anyone who has been at this, I see people laughing, knows that this is such a fallacy. It is so much easier to burn out when you're doing what you love because you love it. And also because when you take action, you can see tangible results. As an employee, you don't often see what you are creating when you work harder. You can in entrepreneurship. So be really mindful of burnout. All right, that's vision. Now we're going to talk about values. So values are what you stand for. This is, the process of your vision. You're going to come up with some different values that are going to be really important to you. Values help us feel in integrity with ourselves, so especially as entrepreneurs, if it's just you or a smaller team, being in integrity with yourself is really going to help you show up in your job. It also helps clients and customers feel really connected to you on a deeper level. And if there's one thing that you take away from this, I want you to know this, and that is that values say something about us. When we buy from brands that have strong values, we do it because we get to say something about us. And that's so important because it's a nice way for us to humble brag about the things we care about, right? So we might buy from Patagonia because we believe in taking care of the planet. We might buy from Ben & Jerry's because they stand up for social and environmental causes that we believe in. Maybe we like that they're bold or that they're playful. We might buy from Bombas because for every item purchased, a clothing item is donated to a homeless shelter or homelessness-related charity. And so now you can start to see why values are so important for your brand, because it gives people a reason to talk about the experience they had with you, whether that's the product, whether that's the service, whether that's an interaction that they had with you. And there are so many other benefits to values. We're going to go over just 4 of them. The first one is that it attracts your dream clients. So the more clear you are in putting your values out there, the more easy it is for people to see them from afar and go, that's what I want. I want to have something that represents that in my life. And at the same time, we're going to repel the people that you don't want to work with. And this is important for everyone, no matter what kind of brand you have. But I would say for my service providers, my coaches, my consultants, this is even more important because you have a more intimate relationship with your customers. It's not just a transaction. You might be having conversations with them for weeks, for months. If you are not a fit with their values, it is going to be so hard to work through that. So we definitely want to be repelling people as well. And generally speaking, a lot of us are working in highly saturated markets. And so when you have really clear values and a really clear vision, you're going to stand out from the sea of sameness. And last but not least, and probably my favorite one, is that it gives you a lens through which you can evaluate every other business decision. So in this example, it says new business opportunity. Maybe this is a collaboration. Maybe this is a podcast or a press feature or a new business idea or an offer idea, right? If we're trying to decide, is this something that makes sense for our business in the long haul, you can use values as the lens through which to make that decision. Is it aligned with us? Yes, it's a good fit. Is it not? Maybe not. Maybe it's not aligned. And that doesn't mean it's a bad idea or a bad opportunity. It just means maybe it doesn't make sense right now. So when we think about values, the thing that I get a lot is like, oh, I don't want to repel people, right? There's people with money in hand. I don't want to push the people away. And my thing is you can't be for everyone. Have you met every person that you've met? Have you liked them? Because I have the personality of a golden retriever, and even I don't like every person I've ever met. And so your brand and my brand and everybody's brand is not going to be the exception there. And this idea of being for everyone is truly a luxury you don't have unless you have incredible scale that you can then leverage. So I'm going to give you an example of what this actually looks like in practice for those who are like, I just don't want to repel people. This will walk you through it. So let's say you're a candle maker. Arguably, candles could be for everybody. Maybe not small children, right? But like generally speaking, adults' candles are probably fine. And I would say, okay, but why should someone buy your candle that's for everyone or the competitor's one that's for everyone? And so then you can start to see the wheels turning. Okay, well, mine are small batch. Mine are handcrafted. All right, let's think about where you're selling this product. You're at an art fair, and you're in your booth, and 2 tents down, someone else is selling candles. I would bet that they're also going to say that they're handcrafted and that they're small batch. So we have to find something that's more unique. And so what happens is when there isn't a clear differentiation between the values, between the vision, between something that I can really gravitate onto and just sink my teeth into, our brain is like, how can I make a decision? What information do I have in this data set? And you're going to look at these 2 candles and you're going to compare it based on the one thing that you know for sure, which is price. Yep, and you do not want to be competing on price because that can be a race to the bottom. I don't think you want to be the Walmart of your industry. I don't think you want to be the Fiverr. We want to show that we're having clear value. So here is an example of what it can look like from a client of mine who is making sustainable candles. So she is really big into making sure everything is sustainable, eco-friendly. She gives 10% of her proceeds back to animal shelters. And so now when someone is looking at her candles, even if it's more expensive than the one that's for everyone, people are going to buy it because it represents something that they care about. They can have it in their home. And so now that they have people over for dinner and they're having wine and they have charcuterie, and they're like, oh my gosh, that candle smells amazing. And they get to say, oh, it comes in all sustainable packaging. It comes with this paper seed topper that goes on top of the candle. And when I'm done with this glass jar, I can clean it out and put dirt in it and plant these flowers in it. And now I get to go, wow. Everyone goes, wow, you're so great. You love the environment. And you go, I know. That's what we want. That's what values can do. We want your fans to be that obsessed with what you're doing. And so then when we have your vision and your values, now you can really get clear about who your target audience is. Because you're like, okay, these are the things they value. This is what they care about. We're getting a clear picture of who they are. And now when we start to talk about target audience, I often see everyone's shoulders just like raise up a little bit because you're like, oh, I have to create an ideal client avatar. Don't stress out about it. We don't need to worry about the demographics so much when it comes to branding. So it's not necessarily like, I don't know what age they are. There's such a big span. I don't know what gender they are. When it comes to branding, we care more about their values. We care more about their belief systems. We care more about their desires, the goals that they haven't started but they want to. What are their lifestyle choices? What lifestyle do they want to have? That's where the richness of branding comes in. The demographic information is important for marketers, right? If we're going to have a marketing campaign, we have to know, okay, who are we segmenting? What's the gender? All of that. For branding, that's less important. All right, moving on to voice. So what is brand voice? This is your brand's personality. It should be reflective of your brand's values and vision. That's why we're doing these things in this order. And it needs to be consistent across all communication platforms and formats. And I would say for my clients or anyone who is trying to do it themselves, voice is the hardest one to identify because it's kind of like smelling your own scent. You're just like, I don't really know what my personality is like. I'm living in it. I'm in the everyday of it. So we're going to go through 3 different activities to help get you some clarity on your brand personality. So the first thing that you're going to do, take notes on this. There's not going to be enough time to work on it right now. But the first way to help identify your voice is you're going to go to your business's Instagram page or whatever social media you use the most often, and you are going to look for the top 3 posts based on comments. And you're going to rule out things like, collab posts or giveaways, things that might skew the data. And the reason why we're looking at ones that have the most comments is your audience is engaged. So you're probably talking about your values, you're probably talking about something that's really interesting to them, and maybe you've got some trolls. And maybe you've got some people who are like, hey, I don't agree with this, that's great too. Because that means we're talking about our values. Again, we're repelling the people we don't want, bringing in the people we do. And then when you look at those top 3 posts, I want you to look at the visuals, I want you to look at the messaging and think, what kind of personality is this exuding? Is it playful? Is it authoritative? What kind of emojis am I using? What is the personality that this is putting out into the world? And once you look at the top 3, you can start to get a sense of what your personality currently is and what's resonating. The next thing you can do to get a better understanding of your voice is to look at past customer reviews, testimonials, and start to get a better understanding of how people are perceiving your brand from the outside. So here we can think about, what words are they using to describe your products? How do they describe the experience of working with you? And this is important if you have some external feedback that is maybe negative. Branding is also really important at helping you pivot away from the things you no longer want in your business. So what are you trying to work towards? And what are you trying to move away from? And what does all of that information say about your personality? And then we have quite possibly my favorite way to help better understand your voice. This one's great. Take a photo of this as well. I'm going to go through these. There are 12 archetypes, I believe. Counting is hard. I'm going to go through each of these. Archetypes are really stereotypes that we find in our entertainment. So we find them in our literature, in our movies, in our shows, in our plays, all of these things. And so they are a great way to sort of generalize about your personality and kind of get you out of your own head and treating your brand like it's a separate entity. So for the first one, we have the dreamer. And as I go through these, think about which one resonates most with you and your brand. And I would say having 1 or 2 is common. And then you can have some real fun with it and be like, okay, I'm like 70% dreamer and 30% adventurer, right? Then you can start to do some push and pull. But as I go through this, just think about which ones land with you, okay? So the first one we have is the dreamer archetype. So these are brands that are idealistic, they're different, they're futuristic, they're really creative. They don't necessarily worry about standing out because they have a clear vision. Some examples are Apple and Lego, not logo. Then we have the Joker, which is fun and playful, a little bit witty, a little bit silly. Examples are Doritos and the bag company Baboon. Then we have the Rebel, which is shocking, rebellious. They aren't afraid to buck the norms, kind of question the status quo. They are really brave and curious. They want to try new experiences. That's like Red Bull and Harley Davidson. Then we have the adventurer. They're really adventurous. Brave. And they're brave and they like to try new experiences. That's like Jeep and Nike. And then we have the sage and the guide. So this is someone who is really trustworthy and intelligent. They're sort of like the wise old person in the forest that's like, okay, I'm going to help you on your journey. So some examples of that, we have NPR and Tesla. Then we have royalty. So this is more about affluence, being more assertive, having some kind of in-control feeling. So we have Mercedes-Benz and Rolex. Then we have the caregiver. They're really focused on being generous. They're focused on nurturing and supporting and really caring for their customers. That's like Dove and Cheerios. And then we have the friend. They're straightforward, a little playful. They might use humor, not quite as intense as the Joker. And they're just really charismatic. They're easy to love. So we have Target as the example and Billy Razors. And then we have the innocent. They have this sort of whimsical, naive view of the world, but it's like very endearing. And this is generally reserved for brands that are more targeted towards children. So we have Disney and Crayola. So then you can start to use these archetypes to determine what your brand personality is and how you're showing up and how you can speak to your audience even more clearly. And I also want to note that we are all the sage and the guide in some way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's your archetype. So let me tell you what I mean. A lot of us think we are the hero that is saving our customers. We think, oh my gosh, they have this problem and we have to like swoop in and save them. And like, oh, look, we did it. Everyone is their own hero in their story. We as the brand are not the hero. We are the guide. And so when we show up as the guide to our clients, like, hey, I'm going to help you on your journey. Here's a solution that will help you. It comes across a lot better as being like, I saved you. There's a different tone that comes to it, but that does not necessarily mean that it's influencing the archetype. Does that make sense? Nods? Okay, very good. So all together now that we know your vision and values, this is going to tell you who your target audience is, and then you have your target audience, and now you have your brand persona, and now we can determine what your voice sounds like. So I want to show you what this looks like in real time so that way you can start to understand how you can leverage these pieces in your business right now. So your brand's personality, which is based on your visions and values, and your target audience is going to warrant a specific type of communication. So let's say we have virtual assistants, and let's say these two virtual assistants have the exact same product suite. They're doing everything the same, but they have two different personas and two different audiences. So the first one we have is the sage. So they are very wise. They want to help their client get to where they need to be and just sort of guide them on this path. And their target audience is C-level executive women. Then I want you to think about how that communication, that brand voice, would differ from a brand persona of a joker who is serving solo parent women entrepreneurs. This joker type is like, yes, I want to work with women who need me to work at the drop of a dime because the baby is sleeping for the next 20 minutes and she needs my help, and I'm going to be funny about it. If she gets spit up on, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. We're going to laugh. That is so different than the communication that's going to happen for the sage speaking to the C-level executive women. So this is how you can start to leverage, okay, this is my brand persona. This is the person that I'm going to talk to. Again, target audience is based on vision and values. That's going to determine your brand voice. All right. Questions so far? I feel like I'm on a roll. Okay, very good. There'll be more time for questions at the end. So now we have the visuals. So it's only after you've done the work to understand your vision, your values, your voice, that you can even start to consider what the visuals are going to look like. Because that is the information that sets the stage for everything else. This is why if you hire a designer and you're like, okay, I'm going to work with a brand designer, if they come to you and they're like, what color should we use? What font should we use? Whatever. That is a red flag. Run away. Because the designer should not be asking you design questions. It's like if you had a plumber come over and they were like, I'm here, what do you want me to do to the toilet? And you're like, I have no idea, that's your job. You want to be really aware that the designer should be the person that has that knowledge, that can take your vision, your values, your voice, your brand strategy, and then make it into something that is going to communicate what you need it to. And so this is why brand strategy, it covers those 4 V's, well, 3 V's, and it also gets you really clear about your ideal client avatars. It'll walk you through the different purchase paths. It'll talk about the different competitors in your space and how to stand out. That is what brand strategy does. And so anytime you're going to be working on your brand visuals, you need to start with strategy. And what we're doing today is sort of the foundational level of how you can DIY it right now. So now I want to walk you through a case study of what this can look like from a client of mine. So this is Ember Films. She is a Colorado elopement and brand videographer. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is the logo that she DIY'd herself. So when we look at this image, we're just going to shout out some words. What kind of words would you associate with a brand that looks like this? Feminine. Wedding, uh-huh.
Cologne.
Cologne, yeah, I could see cologne.
Ornate, kind of.
Uh-huh.
Minimalist.
Ooh, yeah, uh-huh.
Home.
What was that last one?
Home.
Okay, yeah. So we're getting a lot of like feminine, soft, almost like cologne, kind of like an editorial vibe. I could totally see that. Like it feels like it's a certain kind of visual. And especially with this like very delicate jewelry, we're getting like a lot of soft touches, a lot of femininity. And I was like, this makes sense. And this type of design is very popular right now. And so just using this like minimal serif typeface that feels sort of luxury, high end, there are definitely trends that come in. And so it makes sense that, yeah, videography is expensive. So like, I'm gonna make it look expensive. And I can totally see how we would get here. But then as I started talking to her, we realized that wasn't what she was trying to communicate, even in the slightest. So we worked through her vision, values, and voice, and here's what we discovered together, is that her vision is to show others the radical and bold beauty that existed within them all along, while being mindful of their impact on the earth. So she's working with very adventurous couples. They come to Colorado or they're from here. They're eloping in the mountains. They are not someone who is like, oh, wow, that's it. They're like, no, I want to get married and like backpack and do like a 14er and sleep in the woods. Like that's my elopement. So already we're starting to see a disconnect there. And same with the brands that she's working with. They're outdoorsy brands. So it just wasn't quite aligning. So then we looked at her values. So when we started to talk about what her vision was and the different aspirations she had, we uncovered these values, which were deep connection, taking a lot of time to get to know her clients, get to know their brands, so that way she was really showcasing what was already there. She wasn't having to invent something from nothing. There's a huge collaboration aspect to her process. There's also a deep respect for the earth. So people who are eloping are often eloping in national parks. They're people who are often camping and backpacking, and they care so deeply about not littering, about leaving places in a better way than they found them. So we were like, okay, that's important. Let's make sure that we capture that. And then we had inclusivity. She talked about this in terms of all are welcome here. She works with every kind of couple, every kind of brand. And so we wanted to make sure that was captured as well. And then her voice was an adventurer or friend archetype. So you can already see, how this just wasn't serving her. And I know there's a big wall of text. Bear with me. Because I want to show you what happens when we are able to take those 3 points and create something really meaningful. So instead of saying, yeah, I'm a videographer for brands and elopement couples, we can take that and we can start to, like the example I showed where there's the arrow of the VA talking to the different audiences, this is what happens when we start to use it in a way that's super powerful. So I am going to read it to you, and I'm going to break down what's happening in the different sections. So for the first part we have, Ember Films captures the wholehearted expression of radical and bold elopement couples and brands. No two couples or brands are the same, so we never try to shoehorn our clients' stories into a premeditated formula. So already in this first section, we can see when we were talking about the vision, what are you frustrated by? What drives you nuts about your industry? There is this notion, I learned this myself, that in videography, a lot of people are starting to get frustrated by, especially like elopement videos. I guess they're like, okay, here's our formula. We will take a shot of you, we'll take a shot of your hands, we'll take a shot of the mountains, we'll take a shot of the water. Like it's very premeditated. And people don't like that. And so she wanted to address that because she had past clients say that some negative things about other ones that were like, hey, we don't like this. We want someone who's actually treating us like humans and we'll see our story as it is. So we're addressing that right at the top. Hey, we're not like them. Okay? And we're going to get into the next portion. Instead, we believe in deep connection, authentic storytelling, and thoughtful collaboration. The kind of meaningful connection only rivaled by that found around a dying campfire after a day of adventuring. With embers glowing, the conversation softens in volumes and expands in richness as you address topics on your heart with vulnerability and compassion. You are seen in your full humanity and loved all the more for it. Whoa, are we still talking about a brand? I got swept away on vacation for a second. That's what's happening, because this is what her couples and her brands resonate with. This idea of being around a campfire, this speaks to them in a way that generic conversations about, yeah, we'll take a video and it'll be so great. We're getting at something deeper here. And that's the kind of experience you can expect from Ember Films. We capture the beauty and complexity already present and mirror back the incredible story that is already unfolding. So already you can start to see, just by having the vision, the values, the voice, we can really start to build something that is a lot more meaningful than if you were just trying to grab colors, grab fonts, all those things. So then with this information, we're like, okay, we have an adventurous friend archetype. We have people who really care about sustainability. They don't want this sort of premeditated thing. How do we make visuals that support that? So this is the brand we came up with for her. This spoke way more clearly to her audience because it felt outdoorsy, it felt adventurous. And it's not just a matter of choosing the right font or like making a cute little icon. It's a matter of finding ways to communicate all of those values, that richness that we went through in the whole first half of this presentation. How do we translate that into something that's really going to be something that they can sink their teeth into, that they want to get as a sticker and put it on their Nalgene, or that they're going to put on the car? Like, how can we make something that is that powerful and that resonant?
What does it say underneath?
Yeah, it says wholehearted storytelling. Yeah. And it was definitely something that resonated with both the brands and the couples, because sometimes it can be hard if you have like two different segments. Finding that overlap can be challenging. So if you're in that space right now, give yourself some grace to explore that breadth. And I would say the best way to sort of tap into, if you have two different sort of segments, is what are the values that they both have? And that sort of helps you ground into that. So we took all of that information that she brought up. Again, she had all of these answers within her. I just asked her the right questions. And then we translated it into this mark. And I want to break it down and what this can look like when you have really impactful graphics. So at the top, we have deep connection and collaboration. So we have these two circles that are kind of overlapping, like a Venn diagram, like they are deeply connected. The next thing we have is this flame image, and it's a spark that becomes an illuminating flame. Because just as with couples, there's this sort of initial spark when you meet, and then the flames are going. Same thing with a business. You have this spark of an idea for a business, and then it grows into something else. There's this idea of something small becoming something larger and even more beautiful. Then we have the leaf image, which in the mark is actually flipped upside down. That is for connection and respect for Mother Earth. Within that leaf, we also have an E and an F monogram for Ember Films. And then at the bottom here, where it kind of seems like that's where the embers are, where the fire is starting. Yes, it is like where the fire is, but it's also a story that's unfolding. Like when you have your phone and you're waiting for your loved one or your best friend to text you and you see those three dots. You're like, oh, I'm so excited to hear what they have to say. That's the story that's unfolding. A love story, a brand story, something that is already there and unfolding. So this is what happens when you take all of that foundational work and you apply it to something visual. And remember, when you have this deep sense of alignment to the vision, values, and voice, you're going to feel so aligned with it, maybe so aligned that you get it tattooed on your arm. That is the founder of the company. And what happens is people see you're so passionate about it. I'm not saying you have to get a tattoo, but when you have this deep passion for it, people see it and they're like, ooh, I want what she's having. I want what they're having. It's like the fajita effect, but it's your brand. So you just live into your values and really step into them, and people get curious about it. Like, well, they seem really into that. What's going on over there? It gets them interested. It gets them intrigued, and that can start with the visuals on their experience, but it started with all of that pre-work for you. So I'm going to talk about your homework. Again, if you missed some of those pieces before, take pictures of these. This is for your tapping into your vision. You're going to ask yourself these 4 questions. This is going to help you root into your vision, so that way you have a really clear idea of where you are going. Again, remember, frustration and aspiration are 2 sides of the same coin. Then you're going to identify your values. In this talk, I was like, when you do your vision, most of the time you're going to have some values come through. If you're like, I don't know what my values are, I need a little bit of additional support, that QR code will take you to get my free brand introspection workbook that will help you more clearly identify your values. It'll help you understand how you can start to implement them in your business, how they can show up in your services, in your onboarding, in your packaging, all of those things. Then you're going to leverage your voice. So for the voice, this is the brand personality. Again, review those top 3 social posts with the comments. Try to identify what they all have in common, what personality they're exuding. Then you're going to assess your customer reviews. Again, see how others are perceiving you from the outside and try to see if that's the direction you want to move in or if there are things you need to alter in order to get on path with what you want. And then you're going to utilize those brand archetypes to create messaging that will resonate with your ideal client. And again, your ideal client is determined by your values, by your vision. And I get it. Understanding our brand can often feel like we are trying to read the label when we are inside the bottle. We are so caught up in the day-to-day of like checking the email and following up and being the bookkeeper and wearing 10,000 hats. And we're like, I don't even know what my brand is. And so the easiest way to read the label is to have someone on the outside tell you what it says. And so if you're ready to get really clear about your branding and you're ready to have that strong brand strategy, translate it into visuals that are going to resonate with your ideal client. I'm accepting new clients. And I would say my investments start at $5,000. And if you book a discovery call, we don't have to talk by this time. If you book a discovery call by the end of day tomorrow, you will save $300 on your package. And that is all I have. I would love to take any questions you have, and thank you all for coming. Yes?
Ember Films
Yes.
very focused on this particular type of film that they want to produce, ready and local. What if you're a more general services company that has different, say, potential clients, completely different segments, right? Architectural photography versus documentary film versus adventure film,
Yeah.
right? Separation of brand to different entities versus keeping it all under one umbrella. Thoughts on how to approach that?
Yeah, so first thing I would consider is scale. So if you have huge segments in each of those areas, it might be time to start about pulling them apart. If they are all still, they're a nice chunk for each and they don't feel like they warrant a whole separate brand, what I would do is do an overarching brand, focus really on the values that overlap for all 3, and then from there, start to parse out, okay, how can I tweak the messaging for each of these? And people are a lot smarter than we think. I think a lot of us, especially like multi-passionate entrepreneurs or people who have these many segments, we're worried that people are going to get really confused. We're actually pretty smart as humans. I mean, we can decipher quite a bit. And so if you have a clear overarching mission that you can say, hey, we're going to make the most impactful visuals for whatever industry or however that is, breaks down, then you can have more targeted information once they get into sort of sub-pages on your website or once they dig a little bit deeper. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to currently start
Yeah.
that dilemma, right? Because I've discovered I had to pivot a lot through the pandemic in order to survive. And now I have multiple clients, and they're so diverse. I don't want to confuse my architect with my documentary film and vice versa.
Yeah.
That's the current question I have is how do you go about naming that?
Yeah, naming is a whole separate workshop. But yeah, I mean, you could have subdivisions, you could go into different areas, but yeah, that's a whole part of strategy that is very in-depth. So I definitely hear you.
I'll pass the floor to others for questions and maybe we connect at the end.
Yeah, that sounds great. Other questions? I have a master's in education, so I will stand here until people ask me questions.
I have another question,
Yeah.
kind of branching off of that one, and it's when you offer two very different services that are in service to one another, meaning that, like, for example, I do strategy
Okay.
and organizational design, but with that comes coaching. So
Okay.
I coach executive directors and even community members, right? So there's kind of, in order to make this strategic plan work, people have to work on their mindset to believe it's possible. And so I feel like they're two different things, and I'm trying to figure out. So I heard heard you in terms of the overarching
Yeah.
piece, but I still feel like there's some type of like, what else could be done or to really solidify that message because I build systems, both for people and for organizations.
Yeah. So would you say that the person that is working with the coaching, are they the same client that also gets consulting?
Not always.
Okay.
But I have very few coaching clients that come in just on their own.
Uh-huh.
They want life design.
Okay.
And then the organizational design, those are the executive coaching clients.
Uh-huh.
Or the implementers, the people who need to do the work. So it's a very distinct audience. But they bring me in for the organization. And that's probably 80% of my business.
Okay. Do you like that it's 80% of your business?
No.
Okay.
Because even though I'm making 80%,
Right.
I'm making money there, but I think the scalability is in offering things that can be accessed by more people, right, at a different price point perhaps. But it's that, like, how to pick. I don't know, like.
You don't necessarily have to pick, and you can also choose like marketing strategies that are going to support this, right? So are the people that are finding you for this, coaching, is that coming from a certain social media platform? Are they coming from referrals? Can you parse them out by?
All relationships so far.
Okay.
And it's amazing because I've literally, I'm at 200,000 or above.
Yeah.
Just from relationships. And so there's a part of me that's like, wow, I can literally get to millions if I figure
Yes.
out a way to do that other arm of, I don't have to be present, but I can offer value in another way, right? And so there's kind of that in my mind. I'm thinking, okay, the one-on-one relationship building is working, but I'm going to hit a potential where it's going to be like, I only have one me, right? So unless I hire other people, like I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. But yeah, the intersection would be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, looking at the overlap and also thinking about like, is this the same person just further along on their journey? And starting to parse those different things out. There's a lot to sort of pull out there, and if you want to connect after this, I'd be happy to talk to you about kind of what other activities you can do to get additional clarity there. Yes?
So, have you had any experience working with someone whose personal brand is the brand itself? As in, for example, I'm a fitness influencer. So the thing that I'm marketing is just myself.
Yeah.
I have no product or service. How would that brand design process look like? Because the values are not necessarily the value of the company, but sometimes the value of the person themselves.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you nailed it on the head. Sometimes they are your values, so you actually don't have to divorce yourself from like, oh, that's my separate business. Yes, your brand will probably be your name, but it's having your own values come through more, and you have a nice niche, so that way people know what you're doing, they know what makes sense for collaboration. So it's just making sure that who you are is really strong and bringing that forward in a way that is aligned visually with your clients. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you had any experience with clients like that in the past?
Yeah. I've worked with a trainer before. I've worked with an overarching marketing company. So she has several different things underneath her, and she's a fitness influencer. So she has her brand, Jennifer Nagel Brands, and then she has all of these sort of sub brands underneath it. So yes, it's not uncommon. Yes.
What are your just general thoughts on branding or real estate agent and interior designer?
Just general thoughts. Yeah.
Because it is a name, and every client's different. I like the fact that you said you repel some of your people that you don't want to work with because they can be a time suck.
Yeah.
General thoughts.
Yeah. Is the real estate agent the same person as the interior designer, or two separate? Two separate. Okay. So I've worked with real estate agents, and it kind of depends. I've had ones where they use their name, and then I've had ones where they're like, okay, I'm going to separate it. The most recent one I have was Denver Native Homes. And so you can start to decide how much of yourself do you want present. Especially like in your example, you're like, hey, I'm thinking about scaling. I'm going to bring other people on. You can certainly use your name. But some people feel some contention there where they're like, oh, I'm bringing on other people. So thinking about the long scale of it, like, are you going to have a real estate agency where you have other agents underneath you? Are you going to be an interior designer with others under you? That might be a thing to start to consider. And then try to decide, okay, if that's not the case, if I'm going to go with my name, okay, what are the values? What is different? And then you can start to work on the naming strategy too.
Taking it one step further, that agency in Denver is obviously Denver, and in that specific category of broker designer, how do you feel about including your area? Meaning Denver or city or town, or can you just eliminate that?
You can eliminate it, and there is some, with that client specifically, it's like, are you going to have a team that's going to extend past that, right? Like, is your team even going to stay in the location where you are? So you have to start, and it's also something you can drop off. You see this a lot with parent companies, and then they put some subtext underneath it, and they're like, whatever homes by so-and-so, or in Denver. And then as they grow, as they expand, they drop that bottom part, and most people are none the wiser. They're like, I think there was text there, but I have no idea what it said. So you can also sort of have a tiered strategy where you're like, for right now, I'm going to keep it as sort of like a tagline or some subtext, and then knowing that maybe one day it might fall off. Yes?
How would you manage a product line that's maybe been in existence for a long time and wants to totally rebrand and like change what they want to do? Would you go through the same sort of process here with all defining values?
Yes.
Are parts of the existing products that exist out there and all have to be changed?
Yeah, so that transition period of having to redo the branding and the packaging and all of that. Yeah, I mean, I would still go through the exact same process. The nice thing is that that process is usually faster for the people that I have that are doing a rebrand because they've at least done some of that work. And then the part that happens is my job as a strategist is being like, okay, are you saying that because that's what you've always done, or is that the direction you want to move? So it can just be a little bit slower in sort of questioning some of our initial thoughts to make sure that it's going in the right direction. And then, yeah, you do the whole branding, and then you do packaging, and then you can determine launch strategy. But process is generally the same.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
I'm in the middle of rebranding my company, and it's called Ambrosia Archiving. And we help people digitize their old photos and videos, slides, all of those old memories. And most of my clients are going to be an older demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the brand has to be very crisp and
Yes.
clean, but I also want to evoke nostalgia.
Mm.
So wondering, like, is black and white or color, or what are your recommendations for reaching a Gen X baby boomer market?
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia is one of those things that means so many things to so many people. So really getting clear about your clients, and especially when you're thinking about like the clients that you serve, think about like the favorite ones that you've had and sort of what their favorite part of the process was, and start to think about, okay, how can I bring in more people like Jeff, right? Like Jeff was so great, and I want to have more people like that. What was Jeff most excited about that process? And then start to see what you can capture from that. So if he really liked that it was collaborative and personal, like, okay, maybe you have like a softer touch, right? And like nostalgia, we can weave that into anything. It's just a matter of making sure that those other pieces are there and that you're really speaking to the audience. Does that make sense? Okay. Yep.
So you talked about social media, like evaluation, looking at your communication. What advice would you give to someone who hasn't started a business yet?
Then you are in the driver's seat. So what you get to do is you get to make a decision, and then you get to be an experimenter. You get to go, okay, I'm going to put my stake in the sand right here, and you're going to start to see who shows up. And so you have your flag, and some people are going to show up, and you go, this person was great, this person was great. I don't know who the hell you were. And you're going to keep moving it. Okay, I think I want to move a little this way. I think I want to move a little this way. And just come at everything from a really curious mindset. Everything is going to be an opportunity for you to learn more about, hey, this messaging got a lot of traction. What was I doing there? And it's going to happen slowly over time. But yeah, instead of looking backwards at existing data, you're just going to move forward and try to take the next best step and see kind of what is happening as you do it. Right.
Do you have any recommendations for implementation if you have a business that has like a brick and mortar store online as well as like online? So like if you're updating the online presence but you haven't updated the physical store and location, like the disconnect, how to communicate with customers during that?
Yeah, so is this a real situation? Like, is this someone you know or someone who's already done this?
It's a family business.
Okay, and have they already updated the website first?
I'm trying to convince my
Not to-
family that we need to update everything.
Okay, perfect. So in whatever order that it happens, yes, they should both happen at relatively the same time. I would say it kind of depends on the business. So if you have a ton of street traffic, right, like most of the business is coming from the storefront, I would update the storefront first. If most people are coming from the website, I would update the website first. And ideally, they should be happening around the same time, ideally at the same time, but really focus on the one if you can't make them happen, because I understand life happens. Focus on the one that is getting the most traffic first. Okay. Yep.
A question on the names from some of the conversations.
Yeah.
It seems like the name is fairly tightly coupled with the branding and such.
Yeah.
It's a separate exercise, but if you're starting out from the beginning and you're trying to get all this
Yeah. Yeah, if you're just starting at the very beginning, and I would actually say this is one of my controversial opinions. If you are just starting and you don't have any sort of proven market success, just pick something. Don't necessarily even hire branding, do the exercises we did, don't hire anybody, and just put it out there. And again, start to be like, okay, yeah, test it out, see what's working. And you can also change the name. But the thing that I hate to happen is to have someone be like, all right, I'm going to start this new business. And then they're like, oh, but I don't have the perfect name. Oh, but I don't have the perfect thing. And then they put all these barriers in, and before you know it, they haven't started their business. And I'm like, just start the thing. And then you can go from there. You can always change the name. You can always do those things. But the first and most important step is to start.
So would you prioritize like the branding exercise over the name?
Yes. Yeah, because really understanding the values is the most important part. And yes, the name should evoke that. But if you also think about if you're getting most of your stuff from like social media, people aren't really looking at what your handle is. They don't really even look at your logo. Like they're going to get the overall experience, and that's going to come through more clearly from the strategy. Yep. Yep.
That's a super good point. I mean, it's almost like you could jump in and you will make so many excuses. Oh, it doesn't look right. And the reality is, before you launch your site, it's not going to be perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Do it and just keep going and mold, you know. You had a comment earlier. Well, first of all, awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was like power packed and great. That was really helpful. You mentioned like do what you love and you don't have every day of work in your life. And I always kind of describe it as like work and hobby.
Uh-huh.
Like if you're gonna go work, and like what's your hobby?
Yeah.
Bring you enjoyment. You know, is it a bike? Is it a pair of running shoes? Is it a canvas to draw on? Whatever. How do you kind of look at that whole piece of do what you love and be a day at work? I didn't get to follow up on your comment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot easier. I love what I do. And I have burnt out doing what I do. I'm much better now. But, like, there's definitely something to, like, creating parameters around your life to do that. And I am a huge fan of having a secret hobby. Like, have a hobby that it has no online presence, that only, like, your close friends know about. Because there's such this drive in capitalistic culture to be like, hey, you have this hobby. Have you thought about monetizing it? You could make money. And all of a sudden you're like, why do I have 6 businesses and no joy? So just, I'm a huge fan of having sort of these separate hobbies outside of it. And still love what you do. Anybody else? All right. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
That was brilliant, Christy. Thank you. And a segue, today at 2:30 is a keynote over at the HQ Amazon space. And what we have is, I was fortunate enough to bring in Linda Gross. And oddly enough, some of the stories with Chenard and Patagonia and those guys, she was part of the catalyst that started the vision and the work towards sustainability and organic forms of measuring. So she's going to talk about wayfinding and what it's like to bushwhack through a culture today. Really, really fascinating. Please mark your calendars and show up today at 2:30. Thank you.